Hey, Tom, Brandon here. I have a question today. Can you get AI right if you're getting knowledge management wrong? And I don't know a better person to talk to than my good friend Aaron Rice, who's the general manager of CXone Expert. Aaron, great to see you.
And you, looking forward to this.
Yeah, as I've been thinking about this subject, been thinking about our conversation we had, in Peru and the presentation you gave. It was just pretty eye-opening about how big this subject is and how important it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been a long time coming, and with AI, having a practice that you can force multiply, having a good knowledge data set is going to be key for a lot of organizations going forward.
Well, I wanted to share a quick video that I created there as you got me thinking about knowledge management. We were there in Peru at Machu Picchu, and so I created this quick video just as something to have a little fun with the subject.
Machu Picchu, one of the most extraordinary places in the world, yet we know so little about it. Why? Because they didn't have a proper knowledge management system.
It is crazy, like how many different things, how many different presentations I saw on about Machu Picchu, and you would hear very different things from different people.
Yeah, I think that as kind of corny as that was, I mean, it's true. Um, Knowledge has been around for as long as human beings have been doing anything, really. Cave paintings, writing, a way of transmitting from one generation to the next what they've learned along the way to so that we can advance. And I think, to a large degree, because it's been around so long, it's been taken for granted,
Yeah,
and
you know,
it's so ubiquitous, and there's so many applications doing it.
Well, and certainly, I mean, they did have knowledge management. You're right. I mean, it was passed down, it was oral, it was demonstrated. So they did have this system. The problem is it just didn't last, and it wasn't scalable, and it didn't last the test of time. I'm sure you see a lot of organizations. I mean, obviously, the smaller ones certainly still exist that way. It's still
Yeah,
a new person
yeah,
comes on, they just
yeah.
tell them what to do and explain to them what to do, but obviously with turnover and with scale, this obviously presents massive challenges for organizations, and everyone's trying to do it. There's different approaches. You know, Before we talk about the people that are doing it right, what are some of the mistakes or some of the challenges that you're seeing with companies that are struggling with knowledge management?
Well, I mean, there's a lot I can say on that, but let's just talk about Gen AI because it's what everybody's concerned
Yep,
with.
yep,
Um, it's all about so Gen AI for me is a force multiplier. If you've got a clean data set, you can do a lot.
hmm
The trouble that I'm seeing most people run into is they're focused on getting the experience, but they're not really dealing with the garbage in, garbage out problem, or they're only realizing how big of a problem they have when they actually stand up a bot and start interacting with it. Um, the fact of the matter is, if you don't have a governance system on any data, it decays. It becomes problematic over time. That doesn't matter if it's financial accounting data, data going into your CRM. If you don't have a system to maintain and label and purge old, outdated, correct, you're going to end up with a junky database. And when you back that into any model, any large system, any bot, you just end up creating a junk bot. It's only going to be good the data that you feed it. And so the number one problem that I'm seeing is most people's knowledge. So most people don't have, or most companies don't have a knowledge practice, which means they've no knowledge governance, which means whatever that data set is that they hope to feed into their bot, 60, 70% of that could be in some state of decay.
mm
It's outdated, it's old, it's duplicative, or it's wrong. And when people write, because people write quite quickly now, the amount of time and thought and effort spent cleaning that up and making that really tight before they submit it to the data center has become almost zero. So
mm
there's no review. There's no,
mm.
if you've made an ambiguous statement, and it happens often. I mean, it happens to me often in Teams chats or whatever. where you go, I'm not too sure exactly what you meant here. You wrote that so fast, it's come out kind of garbled. And this is a phenomenon that's only going to accelerate as people can generate more content. More content's going to come into the system. And if you don't have a system of governance, I think you're in a hard spot. For companies that do have a system of governance or know how they're going to maintain that knowledge set, I think they're really going to accelerate and overtake everybody. But that's not what I'm seeing as being the typical.
Yeah, let's if we could just dive a little deeper into system of governance. What do you mean there? Is it an application? Is it a group or a person or a strategy or what all goes into that?
Yeah, there are a system of best practices that people deploy to maintain knowledge. Now, normally, knowledge has been maintained for a dedicated purpose, whether and for a dedicated audience. You've got knowledge being created for product teams. You've got knowledge being created for support teams. You've got knowledge being created for marketing purposes or for sales teams. And the thing that's really changing now is very often that's the same core idea that's just being reformatted for the use of that audience. Um, and I'm going to call that for this purpose content lensing. I can take
Okay.
something that's true and then I lens it in a way that's suitable for a product team, or I lens it in a way that's suitable for a casual user or an end user. And right now, you've got all of those silos basically taking the same idea and processing it in a different way for those audiences. And I think with LLMs and their ability to transform content, how it's displayed, the language used, that's getting completely rethought. And really, what you want to do now is just have a data set that's well structured of basically true statements that now can be lensed for different audiences or for different purposes, can be reformatted for a mobile phone as bullet points, summarized. But you do want to have a really well-maintained corpus of knowledge that you can pull from for all of those systems. And the way of getting that core corpus together is it's a system of best practices that are now being enhanced by large language model tooling, appliances like ours.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that all makes sense, but for organizations, you talked about siloed, you talked about very different parts of the company, that operate very independently. Who do you see kind of driving that the emphasis on that kind of standardization and on that governance? I mean, who in the organization ultimately do you see kind of driving that?
Okay. Right now, in the past, each department that needed to create documentation might have a couple of individuals dedicated to that process, technical writers, knowledge managers, those kind of people. I think that this group of people become very powerful in the go forward because they're enabling the that data store that now will feed into tools, automation tools that will actually be customer facing, customer serving. So in the right kind of structure, knowing how to maintain that data set, anybody who owns and knows how to maintain a data set in the go forward is going to get a lot of new tooling, ways to ingest, ways to
Hmm.
parse. Uh, People will create little agents or um, little LLM tools that will detect duplication, outdated content, and the facilitation of people who know how that data is structured and being enhanced with tooling going together will enable a lot of outbound channels that will be facilitated by a bot, a chatbot, etc., that will replace potentially a lot of humans that ordinarily would have transported that knowledge forward.
One of the things that struck me earlier this year, your CEO, Barack Alam, said, he talked about starting over your digital transformation journey. And I've been really challenged by that statement. It was very bold. And as I interviewed him later on, he even said, it's maybe a little bit of a over, statement, but the point is, there is kind of a rethink of digital transformation, prioritizing these decisions that maybe having data in one central location wasn't a priority. There was focus more on CX or user interface or agent tools or whatever. But it seems like it does require for some organizations kind of a rethink to make sure that they're better positioned to do this.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely right. I think your focus is shifting a lot more to the experience you're trying to create. And then in order to create that experience, what data sources do you need to connect to channel that through? And so the data sources can be in a myriad of different places, and they probably need to stay there, close to the subject matter experts that create that truth. I suppose a way of thinking about it is the focus needs to be on getting a clean stream of true statements
Hmm.
into this data store, and connecting those different subject matter experts together in some sort of system that then ends up creating this kernel of true statements that then can be lensed into different experiences, different uh, orchestrated in different ways to deliver service experiences, sales experiences, support experiences, etc.
Another thing that really struck me from the analyst briefing was the demo that you guys showed about how AI can be used to help build this. It's not just a matter of these all this knowledge has to be built. In fact, you showed a demo where someone went on the web, searched for something, they didn't get the answer. They went to a chatbot, didn't get the answer. They went to an agent, didn't get an answer. And your AI was able to identify the question that was being asked, and then was able to evaluate conversations from agents that were successfully handling this type of question, and then generating a draft of a knowledge base article, in virtual real time for approval to be published. And the cool thing about it was once it was published, it showed up in all of those different areas. So it showed up on the web, it showed up immediately in the chatbot, and it showed up in your agent assist. I love that example of AI, helping to build what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this is the huge power that we're getting now. To be able to listen to a lot of conversations and understand, is there a macro trend happening? Do we have a recall imminent? Are we starting to see a spike in a certain kind of problem? At the same time, we can be indexing all the time, all those data sources that may be able to supply an answer and categorize them. And then we may be able to match them. Say, this over here, this set of questions is
Hmm.
answerable
Yeah.
here. All we have to do is orchestrate the means of getting that answer to and into a format suitable for that channel. And that's essentially what you're talking about there, the matching of need with the knowledge source. That's a knowledge management issue. How do we connect that together? And how do we make sure that that answer that we're giving is actually true and accurate and factual and up to date?
Yeah, I would think too, from an audit perspective, auditing what agents are saying, auditing what your knowledge is. Like, they may have figured out a better way to do something that they're telling customers, and it's not updated in the knowledge, or they may be giving worse instructions that's in the knowledge. So I imagine there's an audit opportunity there.
There absolutely is. Like you can see that, okay, that agent, there was nothing in the existing aggregate of knowledge to answer that question, but the agent investigated and created that. All of that becomes a record that can be siphoned into a new knowledge piece that can get put back into the system if you've got a knowledge management process, a governance process to capture that. So was it new? Is this a new piece of information? Is this a new knowledge kernel that we're creating right now? How do we harvest that and put that in? It's very easy to run a sentiment over that to say that was really, really good.
Mm.
And then if you actually start stratifying your interactions into, that was a really terrible interaction based on this knowledge set. We need
Mhm.
to we need to really put that into a queue to have that addressed or modified or made better. And then you've got this whole layer of these were all good answers and that we want to leave generative. And then you have some that were just, that was an exceptionally good answer. I
Mm.
don't want to generate that anymore. I want that to be cached as almost like the standard response. And having a system that's looking at that and really parsing that into those three layers, freeze this one, cache this one, always provide this one in this particular set of cases. Generate here. These are all a good set of responses, and these are junk responses that we need to address. That's really where knowledge management is going, and I think that's where service is going overall.
I'm sure you talk to customers all the time, and you've been in this space for many, many years. As you talk to folks about their planning and strategy around AI, what are some of the things you're advising companies to do as they start this journey?
So companies in general are at several stages right now. A lot of them just want to understand what can this thing even do?
Hmm.
Uh, how do we manage uh, problems like hallucinations? Now, for me, hallucinations is going to be a solved problem. In many cases, it's already a solved problem. When you
How
have
do you
some,
mean? How do you mean?
uh, when you have something this powerful as Gen AI obviously is, and you've got a problem that's ubiquitous, like its propensity to invent things, there's a high likelihood that that problem's going to be solved. Ways of measuring the confidence in the statement is just going to be embedded into a lot of
Okay.
systems. Otherwise, they just can't fulfill their purpose. So
Yep.
there's a high incentive, financial incentive to solve that as an issue. So
Gotcha.
I think people need to just understand that the financial incentive for companies like anybody building an LLM, OpenAI, Azure, Microsoft, AWS, they're going to solve that.
Mm.
And if you've been to any of their conferences, they've got good line of sight on how they want to solve that.
Okay.
So I think that's an issue that you can shy away from. Um, the issue that I do think companies need to spend a lot more time thinking about is how do we manage what's going to be an avalanche of data getting
Mm.
created? This is a generative AI. That means it's going to create a lot of content.
Mm.
That means a conversation like this, you can take this, you can transform it into a transcript, and you could maybe generate the seeds of five, six, seven blog posts. Maybe that's exactly your plan, actually.
You're on to me.
To take this and just proliferate it. But then anybody who's on a Teams call is going to do the same thing. They're going to create summaries, they're going to create content out of it. Um, and there's a whole basic deluge of content is going to start getting created. Um, and much of it is going to be duplicative, and some of it's going to be inferior to other content, and errors are going to be introduced. If you want to take that engine of content creation and you want to turn it into something that's valuable to your company, you need to have a system in place, or you need to have some sort of process in place to curate that, sift out the stuff that's junk, preserve the stuff that's great, and accelerate that through your system. And I don't think companies are thinking about that. They're just thinking about scrapers and
Mm.
creating the bot experience. They're not thinking about, I scrape, but now I've got to clean that up. I've got to really have a way of taking that very junky data set, making it a really good data set, and then keeping it a really good data set in a world where there's just going to be a lot more of it made every day.
One of the things I've noticed that AI needs to be decisive to be useful. Like
Mm.
it just providing a generic summary, like it needs to be decisive. It needs to make some decisions, with a degree of confidence. And if you got chunky data, you're going to get not just slightly incorrect, but maybe even opposite, type of information. So, I totally get, and as I've thought about how deep I wanted to go down this whole knowledge journey, and for a while I was like, I don't, this is not really germane to what I focus on. But now, as this AI story comes into play, like it absolutely is. So, I know we could go so much deeper, and maybe we'll do some follow-up conversations as well, because I'd like to learn more about this. I'm sure folks out there, there's a lot of folks that need to hear your thought leadership on these subjects. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do some follow-up. But thank you so much for your time today. It was
Yeah.
really great to catch up with you.
And you.
Thanks again.